This is the second part of the tutorial for Unit 2, Lesson 1, Intro to Premiere. We're going to be now looking at these options here because for your deliverable, you need to have done all the pieces here in the requirements. So we've already talked about a number of the key concepts. We'll be covering a couple other ones. In and out points were roughly used, and we'll repeat that here, and creating a rough cut will be included in this tutorial. And then the other things to pay attention to are just these requirements. So have a read of these, make sure you know what these are. These will be all covered in this tutorial. So first, what we're going to do is make sure that our sequencer settings are correct. We're going to be using our videos. We have 8 to choose from. We're going to select 6 of them. And then we're going to be looking at how to create continuity in our story. Okay, and what that means is creating a rough cut and making sure that things make sense as you're putting them down in your video. So first, let's open up Premiere. By default, it's going to ask you what you want to name your file and where you want to save it. We've done that previously, so let's hit create. I'm going to skip the intro here, and we're going to go and import our media. From here, we're going to create our sequence by selecting the correct clip to use. We're going to use traffic light. And then because we don't want that to be first, I'm actually going to delete it, but I am going to keep this and name this montage. Sequence settings. I'm just going to check that in fact I have 24 frames per second and 1920 by 1080, and I do, so I hit OK. I'm going to go and check the tutorial to see what this should look like at the end. You should, first of all, you should have already understood or watched the J&L cut, so you know what that is. And then the next thing you're going to do is watch this clip. It's 30 seconds long. Once you know what this clip looks like, you can start using this for your sequencing. First one I want is called Ignition. I'm going to open this up and take a look, hit play, and you can see that it just runs through a key being inserted, and there's some sound with that. I'm going to drag that from here onto my timeline and keep the existing sequence settings because those are the ones I specifically selected. From here, I'm going to make a couple of changes to this clip. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is how this zoom in function is a little bit hard to get used to. So this is a scroll bar that you've probably seen before, a horizontal scroll, but on the ends of each of these scroll bars is a little dot. If you click and drag that dot, what you're doing is changing the length of the scroll, which means you're zooming in on an area. So right now I've got this clip, I'm seeing it in its entirety, but if I make this scroll smaller, you can see that I would then use the scroll to move left and right. You can also put your cursor over your clip and you can left and right scroll, or if you hold Option and then zoom in or out by scrolling up or down on your scroll wheel. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. It takes a little getting used to, but you'll figure it out. I now want to change it so that the audio comes in and then the video creates a J cut. So that's going to start here, and then the video will start around this point here. To do that, I want to be able to see my visual representation of the audio. So I'm going to click here between audio 1 and audio 2 track. You can see the cursor changes. I'm going to just drag this down like this, and I can now see what's called the waveform. The waveform is a visual representation of how loud things are in this clip. So here where we have these peaks and the valleys, peaks are louder and valleys are softer. So if I go to here and hit play, you'll hear the audio. And that sound lines up with where these peaks and valleys are. This is the sound of the key. This is the sound of the key. This is the sound of a beep. And you can see over the timeline for whatever that is, half a second, it's pretty constant and steady in terms of volume. What I want to do now is I want to make it so that there is no video and we're introduced to the audio as we see in the demonstration video. So to do that, we learned previously that I can pick this up and move it around, but these two are connected. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to click here and right click and select unlink. As we learned, I can now move these independently of each other. I'm going to undo that. I want this clip to start at around the 4-second point. So I'm going to click here in my timeline timecode and type in 400 and hit enter. That puts me right here just at the very end of the second beep. I'm going to put my cursor at the start of this video and I'm going to bring it forward. What's happening is it's not moving the clip, it's trimming out the first 4 seconds of this clip so that it only begins at the 4-second point. You'll notice that in the original video here, we have the empty key slot, the key gets pushed in and then dropped. Whereas here, now that I've edited it, there is no person putting the key in, the key is already there. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Good, exactly what I want. The next piece of this, we're going to zoom out a little bit and make a decision about what should be coming next. So right now we're viewing this as a list. If I go full screen by hitting tilde and change my view from list view to icon view, I can actually view these in their kind of a thumbnail view. And if I put my cursor over each of them, I can then see kind of what happens in each video. It gives me a bit of an overview. What I want to do here is create what's called a rough cut. A rough cut tells me roughly the sequence that I want to have my clips work in. So we already know that the first one is our ignition, which is here. I'm going to drag this to the beginning. The next thing I want is actually the tachometer. So I'm going to drag the tachometer to be second. After that tachometer, we use the wheel backing up. From there, we're going to go to, I think what's next is, I'll have to check the tutorial, the video, but I think it's the traffic light. No, it's not, sorry, it's the aerial view. We're going to go aerial view, and then it's either one of these two. Okay, so this makes sense. If you watch this, we have the key getting inserted, we have the car revving up and starting, the car backs up from a standstill, and then goes forward and stops in the same position. We're only going to use part of this clip. Here we have a panning or kind of a floating drone shot. We have the person driving from the point of view of a window, and then we have a couple more shots. We have the rear view mirror and a light. Okay, at the end of that light, as that changes, we're going to bring back the end of this video, which is the person stopping, and we'll be done. We also have some audio, but we'll talk about those in time. Tilde to return to my normal view. The next clip we decided I wanted is this tachometer. I'm going to open this up and view what it is. Starting at the beginning, I hit play, and you can see here we have just the tach revving down and then revving up. That revving should be paired with the sound of an engine. So we've already downloaded the start motor sound, which we have here. I got this by going to YouTube and searching the YouTube, it's called the YouTube sound library. You'll need to create an account outside of your school account to do this because of restrictions. We'll talk about this in class, but for now, just know that you need to go and download this. You'll need to eventually go and download some clips from there. I've already provided it here for you, but that's taken from YouTube. I'm going to open this up and hit play so we can see what this is. This is a 6-second clip. I'm sorry, it's a 6-minute clip. Quite a long clip, 6 minutes, 10 seconds, and 19 frames. So we're not going to need all of that, definitely. So we can trim that out. I'm going to stop this here, and we'll just take that to 10 seconds, 10:00, and I'm going to hit my out marker, and that's going to be my clip. I'm going to bring this clip from here. I can do it from either from dragging the audio from this, or I can pick it up from here, and I'm going to put it on a clip track over here. Now, notice that it put it on the same track that I'm working with, but I would actually like to put that on a separate track. So I'm actually going to delete this and show you how to do that. I'm going to move this down. Notice that this is a scroll. There's a scroll wheel here, okay, and I can add more tracks, but just be aware that because I made this bigger, it's hiding some of the lower tracks. Make this smaller again so we can see what we're doing. And I want to put on track 2. So I'm going to click here in this kind of blank space just to the left of this lock. And now what will happen is when I hit this here, insert or overwrite, it's going to add the clip that I created to the layer that I've made active at the point of my timeline. So it should add it right here. When I hit this, okay, it puts it right where that timeline with my playhead was, and there's my audio. Now, I can pick this up and move it. Of course, I can put it wherever I want, but just to know if I did, I'm going to undo that. If I did have this layer active, and then I added it, it's going to add it at this point on this layer, which will overwrite part of the audio here. And I don't want that. I don't want to lose my audio, because notice when I move this out of the way, that's gone. I can get it back, of course, just like any clip. I can bring it back, but just be aware that putting things in certain places is going to get rid of them. All right, so again, activate this layer. I'm going to drop in here the clip that I want, and now let's see what's happening. I'm going to go to this point and hit play. Okay, and so we hear that sound coming in right here. Let's go and get the clip that we wanted, which is this tachometer. I want to align the sound that we hear right here, that kind of engine rev, with the tachometer getting moved up to about this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a marker. A marker is a way to indicate on a clip a point or a part that you want to pay attention to. So I'm going to go using my either the single frame forward or my keys, my arrow keys on my keyboard. I can go forward or backwards. Okay, and so if I'm here, I just go forward. You can see the timeline is moving using my keyboard. And when I get up to the point where that rev stops, that's kind of the one I want right there, which is 3 seconds and 10 frames in. I'm going to hit this key right here, which is a marker. I can hit M on my keyboard, or I can click here, and you're going to see an icon show up right here, and also here in my, in the ignition, in the tachometer clip. So I'll hit this here, okay, and we get this guy here. All right, I'm going to drag this from here, from the video, and I'm going to put it on my second track over here by dragging it over here. All right, so now we have this marker, which tells me that this is the point in the video where the tack is at the point that I want it, right here. And the sound that I want is over here. So I'm going to click on this layer here, double click this, it brings it over into this here. I'm going to bring my playhead back to about here, and I'm actually going to go to just the part where it starts to rev. Okay, I'm going to hit marker. Okay, and now I'll hit play. You'll see that. Let me back this up. Okay, that marker is now at the start of this sound. Okay, and what I want to do is bring that marker and have that aligned roughly with the point at which the tack is moving. So I can do two things. I can bring this back this way and try and get this marker and that marker lined up, but that creates a big amount of space. So instead, what I'm going to do is undo that, and I'm going to bring this forward. I want to get my cursor aligned with my marker, and I'm going to drag this about here until that marker snaps to the right position. Now, this may or may not be exact. We may have to finesse it a little bit, but I also want to do a couple other things. I want to get rid of the beginning of this tack because it's in front of the ignition, and I want to see the ignition. Right now, if we start this over, we never get to see the ignition because this clip is in front. So let me take this and move it. You can see it's back there. It's hidden behind. That's the clip that we see back here, but this is in front of it. What I want to do is I want to cut off the beginning of this to about this point here. Okay, and so what that does is now it reveals this clip until I get to this point. So here we see nothing, then we see the ignition, and then in front of the ignition, we see the tack show up. Hopefully this timing aligns. Let's see. Not quite, but it's close. All right, and so I'm going to try and might zoom in a little bit here. And it looks like that sound needs to come up a little bit. So I might actually bring this back a little bit. That's pretty good. I might touch it up still a little bit, but that's pretty good. So now we have our clip starting like this. We hit play, we get our sound, our beeps, our first clip, and our engine revving. Okay, so we're pretty good to about this point. Now we're trying to make this clip, this entire clip, 30 seconds. You'll notice here in our requirements that this needs to be exactly 30 seconds long. So we want to be aware of that. Okay, so what I might do now is here in my timeline, I might go to the 30-second mark here. Okay, I can do this by clicking here and saying 30 seconds. That's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Okay, 30 seconds. And I'm going to hit a marker here just so that I can notice where I am in this clip. So when I start to see this, I'll kind of pay attention to, wrapping this video up. The next thing we want to do is refer back to our tutorial here and see what comes up next. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. 4 seconds. Next, we have the car backing away. At the same time the car backs away, we get this sound, the kind of background audio happening. So that's going to be this guy here. I'm going to let you guys continue experimenting with this. I don't think you need to see me do the entire thing. You've got a rough cut, you've got the audio clips, and you've got a tutorial which will show you what you need to do next. Okay, all of it's here. Just go through each step, following along as you go. What I will demonstrate is how to add in these elements here, which are transitions. We're going to do an audio transition and a dip to black. So I'll leave all of the sequencing to you, and I'm going to just show you a couple of video effects here. So let's jump over to Premiere and head over to Effect Controls and Effects. These are the two we're going to be using. While we're working with any kind of tutorial or any kind of transition, I should say, we want to just take a note of what transition we're talking about and how that works. So to work with this, you need to understand two things. One, our transitions are here in our effects. So we're going to be going to, you'll notice that there's a couple things we're going to have audio effects, okay, and a drop down, audio transitions, video effects, and video transitions. These are ones we're going to be looking at. For now, we're going to do an audio effect, which is here, okay, and we're going to take a look at, actually, no, so I think we'll use audio effect. We're going to do an audio effect. Now, there's a lot here. I'm going to give you, in this case, I'll give you the one that we want, which is called constant power. So I'm going to type in power, and it will find constant power. This is the one that we're going to be using. Before we do, though, I want to show you how we use something called keyframes. Now, keyframes are a little bit tricky, but essentially they're telling the software that you want to make a change and you want to specify the beginning and the end of that change. So if I want to have my audio, which is going to be this clip here, I want to have that audio have a constant power change, which means bringing down the audio. I can do that by adding constant power to it. So I know that I'm going to be bringing in my audio clip, but if I want to fade out my audio, I can use this by dragging this this effect onto my clip. I can put it at the beginning or I can put it at the end. Okay, if I drag it here, okay, what happens is you see it show up here. And what you can do from here, I'm going to click on this guy, and we're going to zoom in on the point at which this happens. This works in the same kind of manner that the zoom does on the main timeline. Okay, I'm going to drag this over. Here's my constant power. So what happens is as I get to the end of this, it just fades out. You can see here, there's like a little line. And I mentioned in the last tutorial that there's a little line that shows up here. In this case, this is also changing your volume, but this constant power, it's hard to see on my screen. You might be able to zoom in on this, but what's happening here is it's fading it down. Okay, so I don't want it in this case. I'm actually going to delete it. I just want you to see that that is the tool that you're using to bring the power down. But in this case, I'm actually going to delete it. So I don't want that. I think I can delete it from here. Oh, I'm going to go to, I'm actually just going to hit undo and get rid of it. Okay, now I want to show you, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to show you how we do this with a video. Okay, a video is slightly more complicated because what it doesn't automatically bring the change. We want to have control over it. So in this case, we're going to go over to video effects. Okay, and I want to clear off my, I want to get rid of this because it's not going to find anything here. Clear that off, open up video effects. And what we're going to be looking for here is dip to black. So I'm going to type in dip, and what comes up is dip to black. Okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to drop this at the beginning of, let's say I'll put it at the beginning of the ignition set series here. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this in. And what you'll see is at the beginning, let me zoom in here. Okay, this now fades in from black. So dip to black can go from black to full color or vice versa. If I undo that, and let me delete this layer for now, just so you can see it. Okay, if I dip to black at the end, I drag this and put it here, you'll see it fades from full color to black. So it's just kind of a fade out. Okay, so you can put it at the beginning or the end of any video clip. Now, say I want to have a bit more control than that. I'm going to click on this tachometer here, and I'm going to go up to here in my effect. I'm going to go to effect controls, and we have a couple of controls here as well. We have motion, we have opacity, and we have time remapping. We're going to, for now, go to opacity, okay? And what you'll see is we have right now opacity is set at 100%, which means, and actually what I'll do is I'll do this on the tachometer to make this a bit more clear. I'm going to go to here, okay? And I'm going to put the opacity for the tachometer to 50%. So I click here and I type 50 and hit enter. You can now see through the tachometer to what's behind it, okay? If I drag that up, it goes back to 100%. I drag it down, it goes to 0. Okay, so there we have some control over this. I'm going to put it back at 100%. But let's say that I want to fade this out over time. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the beginning of my track here, and I'm going to set a keyframe. Now, keyframe tells the software that you want to start or finish an action. So to start it, I want to go to this little, there's like a little stopwatch here. I'm going to click this and it's going to open up a little graphic here. And what that means is that we have a keyframe that's been added. If I open this up, what we have is this keyframe at this point in our video. If I move forward here, you'll notice that went to clear. It was blue, was here. When I go to this point, that's blue. That says there's a keyframe at this point. It's a little hard to see because there's a video graphic in front, but there's a little just here. It's hard to see, but there is a graphic there, and there's also one here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forward to this point, maybe here. I have around here. I'm going to add another keyframe by clicking this button. Okay, and it adds a keyframe at this point. So now I've got two, one at the beginning and one at whatever this is. This is a couple seconds into my clip. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity at this point. And what you'll see is when I drag this down, it changes the opacity at the point where I created my keyframe. If I undo that and put it back, and I navigate to the other keyframe, and I can navigate using these two arrows. This will take me back to the last keyframe, which is here. This will take me to the next keyframe. So if I have a number of them, I can navigate through using this. So I'm going to go to the first keyframe, and I'm going to, again, bring this down, and you can see what's happening now is it's changing the opacity from opaque to, or I should say translucent, to fully opaque. And so now as I drag through this, you'll see that that opacity changes over time. That's represented here, and it's also represented here. I mentioned previously also that we have a line here which controls the same thing. Okay, so we have some control over how that works and how quickly or slowly that happens. If I wanted to, I can actually go to this time keyframe here. I can get rid of this. If I want to get rid of that, go to this one and click on the blue thing. It gets rid of these. Okay, so by clicking on this thing, it adds or removes a keyframe. You just have to be at that point. So say I want to add a keyframe here. I'm going to go back to the beginning, add another keyframe here, and say I want to change this to be, 50% or whatever I want to make it, okay, 56%, and then I want to go to here and I want to bring it down lower. I have control over how long or how short the duration of these things are, okay? So those are the key kind of factors that we're looking at here. What you're going to be doing is for your video, we've already set the sequence, we already have selected our tracks. You want to make sure that your story has continuity. That makes sense, I think, and you're going to be following it. You already have this information because it's here. You're following this exactly. Make sure your total duration is exactly 30 seconds. Fade in the video at the start and fade to black at the end. You're going to have to figure that out using dip to black effect, which I showed you. Use the included background audio track, which I showed you as well. That is, if I go back to my project manager here, okay, the audio is this one right here, okay. It sounds like this. Okay, and you're going to sequence that. You're going to fade out the last 3 seconds of the audio because this clip is much too long. You'll notice it's 3 minutes and 11 seconds long. That's much too long. We only want 30 seconds. So at the 30-second point here, you should be, oops, try that again, 30. Okay, at this point, which will be the end of my clip, I want to back it up 3 seconds, so 27. And here at this point, I want to start fading that audio out using my effect controls that we just learned. Okay, that would be a constant power change. And finally, include sound effects where appropriate and demonstrate at least one L or J cut. Okay, the sound effects we already have are the jingling keys, and the L cut, the J cut we've actually already done. Okay, so there's not much more to do here. I'll leave you to it to give it a try. Once you're done, save your work. You do not need to export your video here. So you'll notice here it says at the end, Okay, you're not going to be exporting anything here yet. We will export in the next tutorial, which is actually the third tutorial. We're going to be learning how to collect and then export. So for now, just save your work as a PowerPoint or sorry, PowerPoint, Premiere project. Okay, you're going to file and you're going to save when you're finished, and we will work through the next steps in the next tutorial.